Hey everybody on the screens, hey Team Phoenix, welcome to the next show, the new episode of the Social Sales Engineer. Whether you're on LinkedIn Live or YouTube Live, we are there. Please shoot your comments. We have a very interesting topic today. It's about how to manage experienced colleagues if you're young or a new leader in the field, right? And my guest today is Ronke Babajide. Babajide. So this is the correct pronunciation. And I'm very happy to have you here. Please give us some introduction to you. I think you have a very professional, huge background, and I love to have you on stage.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Thank you for inviting me to your series, which is a really, really interesting show that you have here. My name is Ronke, as you said, and my last name is Babajide, which is also a very uncommon last name. I'm quite aware, and it usually leads to people asking how to pronounce my name. So don't feel bad about messing it up.
I missed asking.
Yes, you did.
That's my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I work as a pre-sales solution engineer for VMware, responsible for the CEMEA region, and the topic is security. What most people don't know, VMware has a very large security portfolio, and I am part of the Center of Excellence for Security, or I still am. I'm about to switch roles, but that's a topic for another day. And yeah, so I've been in the pre-sale space for, I think about 15 years now, starting with a partner and moving into the vendor space 12 years ago. And I've worked for Riverbed, I've worked for Radware, and now for VMware for the past 5.5 years. Before that, I was also in IT, so I've been in tech for about 22 to 25 years. I forgot to count, but I've transitioned between different roles because initially my education is I have a PhD in chemistry, so a completely different topic. And I transitioned into IT through my thesis, where I did 3D simulations of macromolecules, and then decided that tech was actually much more interesting than chemistry. It was also at the onset of the internet. I did my thesis in the 90s, and the internet came, and it was really, really engaging. And I was so fascinated by this new technology. And my first job was actually as a web developer for a company called Web3 TV. So I've been in tech for quite a while, and I think it's nearly 25 years now, which kind of dates me. But I've been a pre-sales woman for quite a while now.
Yeah, and that's so cool to have you on here, and that you're willing to share actually your experiences. And in the discussion we had before the show, you actually said, yeah, women are actually the best fit for the pre-sales role. What's your experience? Why is it that way?
Yeah, this is something I really believe. I must say that when I started out in my first vendor role at Riverbed, for example, when I started, I was the only woman who was a pre-sales head in the entire EMEA region, which was a weird thing, that so all my colleagues were men. And at that time, I didn't think about it a lot. But, working in the field for so long, I realized there are certain skills that you need as a pre-sales person that are skills that are very often found in women. So one of the thing, and the most important thing actually, is people tend to think it's your knowledge of technology that makes you a good pre-sales person, but it's actually listening. So listening and communication are in my opinion, the top skills for pre-sales solution or sales engineers. Being able to empathize with people, understand their pain, and not just being in the room and letting people talk so you can then talk to them and tell them about the great technology that you have, is something that women are also more inclined to. Let's put it that way. I mean, of course, there are men who are good listeners, but usually women are not that eager to share their thoughts immediately. And that's I think that's a very important differentiation between women and men, you know, that
Would
they're
you
more.
say they are, in that sense, egoless?
I don't think we're egoless. I have a very big ego, definitely. And you have to have a big ego to be a pre-sales person, and because you have to dominate a room usually. And but the kind of ego is different. So my ego is very much around understanding people. I pride myself in being able to talk to people, to nearly everyone. I hardly ever meet anyone that I can't make a connection with. So my ego is built on different things, I think. So while a lot of my male colleagues their ego is built on how good they are at the technology they sell. My ego is around relationship. So yeah, that I think is a big differentiator between women and men. And since a lot of women are like me, I think that they are especially good at pre-sales roles, you know, relating to customers, building relationships, listening, finding their pain points, you know, not going into like a competition with the people on the other side of the table. That's also a thing that men do, you know, unintentionally often, but it happened. I have witnessed this so often, you know, that it all of a sudden you are in the middle of like this feature war. So I know about this feature, you know this feature, and then everybody starts in a discussion that goes nowhere. So women tend to do that much less.
I had a fight with a CIO about their strategy of transformation. It was around mainframes. It was hilarious. But I just feel myself back in the situation when you say this. It's an amazing comparison. So everybody on the live stream, if you're guy or girl, doesn't matter. What's your opinion? Do you agree? Do you disagree? It would be great to read your comments on that. So I think it's a great explanation.
I mean, it's of course a generalization because, you know, people are on a spectrum. Not all women are the same and not all men are the same. But, you know, from all the people I have met throughout the years, I would say that women tend to fall on this side of the spectrum and men tend to fall on the other side of the spectrum. So yeah, I have all these colleagues who are amazing at technology, and I feel the older they get and the longer they do the job, the better they actually get at listening to people. But while I was talking to you, I remembered the story of a colleague who was actually forbidden to come back to a customer because he told them they were idiots, because he felt that he understood the technology better and his ideas were better. And I mean, yes, it was probably even true because I know him and he's brilliant. But that's not something you tell a customer, even if you're, you know.
Yeah. That's about checking the ego at the door. Right?
Yes, very much.
Amanda, welcome to the show. Amanda was a guest a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, hi, Amanda.
She says, I'm listening to you and nodding my head, Ronke. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, nice.
And then from my perspective, the other side, I mean, yes, I feel that women are really good at doing the job, you know, but the other side is I also feel that the job is very good for women. So what I learned is also that it's very flexible, and which allows you to structure your life around the job much better than many other jobs. So pre-pandemic, when in the good old times, when I wasn't sitting in front of my computer all day, I was traveling to customer sites. I had meetings, and then traveling is a big word. Sometimes, I live in Vienna, and a lot of my customers were in Vienna. I would go to the customer, have my meeting, go back. There were travel times. I was very flexible. It was in my responsibility to actually schedule these meetings. So I could schedule them around stuff like shopping, or not clothes shopping, but food shopping, or, going to the doctors, or maybe even meet someone for a coffee, and then, go back to work. And then maybe some stuff I could do in the evening, like finalize some information I wanted to send or answer an RFP. So I had a lot of possibilities to balance out work and life. And I think that is something that's really useful for women. And then, of course, there is the financial part. I feel that it is a job that's really well paid in most companies, which also allows women to have a much more, what is the word in English? Not safe, but financial safety. That's actually the word, to have financial safety, have flexibility in how they structure their day, and do something that's actually exciting. So yeah, I think sales engineering or solution engineering, whatever you want to call it, pre-sales, is the perfect job for women.
Yeah, no, amazing. I have goosebumps when you when you say this. So it's really a perfect description, right? It also applies for guys in that sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, I get the point about the independence and the security.
Yeah. You made a good point there. I tend to talk about women because this is a topic that is very important to me. But I recently had a conversation with a younger colleague who has 2 small children, and he did actually mention the same things. And I think there's a new generation of younger men now in the field who are a bit different from the men in my age bracket, who actually take much more responsibility in child rearing and actually try to integrate their work life with their private life much more. And for them, it is also a great way to do that, being a pre-sales person. Yeah. Or working in this kind of vendor space, I must say, you know, because there are other jobs as well. You can be like a professional service, but that's a bit less flexible. I think I love pre-sales. I think it's just perfect, actually.
Yeah, I love it too. And I think you're right. So there are generations that have different unconscious biases, like like the generations before, right? Also
true. Yeah.
And what they dare to do, like maybe, yeah, men in older generations, they don't dare to say, I care for my kids, right?
I think that is a problem, but it's also, they're just not used to think about this. One thing I always noticed when I was, especially when I was still traveling a lot, I had a job where I was, cross-regional, and I was on the plane a lot. I noticed that I had issues because I had to do all the other things as well, like pack my suitcase, wash my clothes, go food shopping and all that. And I realized that a lot of my male colleagues did not have that problem because they all had wives at home who would take the responsibility for these things, which is an interesting disadvantage for women, I would say. But that has actually changed, I think, with the younger generation. A lot of my younger colleagues, at least, they are actually staying at home after the childbirth for a couple of weeks or months. They actively participate in child raising. So I think it has actually changed. But still, even if you don't have a partner that's quite as attentive or supportive, being in pre-sales helps you, integrate life and work really well.
Yeah. We outsource some of the shirt, like cleaning and packing. So I could just take this out of the right and put it into the suitcase.
Yes, exactly.
This is helpful too. But I get the point. I mean, my wife supports me too, and it's a huge support. It even goes so far that sometimes she says, "Well, you don't look well dressed, right? So, and everybody will ask what your wife why she didn't share for you, right?" Sometimes, I think it's mostly a joke, but there is some
a grain of truth there.
Yeah, it's some truth in there. It's unconscious, maybe, or even like, what are we as a couple, right? We're going really deep now into a different topic, but yeah. How did you cope with that? So, did you learn something from that you do different now? And that you say, okay, I'm developed in that way because of that?
Well, when I noticed most, I was in a situation where I was traveling Monday to Friday nearly. I was working at that time. I was working for Radware, and I was responsible for Germany and Switzerland, even though I was living in Austria. And in the end, the last month I was there, I flew out of Vienna at 6:00 in the morning on Monday, and used to come back on Friday evening, and it was really hard. And what I actually learned is that even though I enjoyed traveling, there's a limit to how much traveling I enjoy. And that it doesn't make there's this aspect of this of the role, which is how can I say it? There is an adventurous part as well. So traveling to different countries, going to customers there, staying in nice hotels, spending your evening on Lake Zurich, or things like that are also part of the appeal of the job. But even if you enjoy that, if you're a woman and you do want to have a social life, or you want to have a life next to the job, traveling from Monday to Friday doesn't work. And what I learned is not to take a job like that anymore. So that's my main learning, that traveling for 2 to 3 days a week is the maximum that makes sense if you still want to have a social life. That is something. And that having a social life is actually important to recharge your batteries. No matter how much fun you have working, there is just a limit to, how much work you can put into 1 week and how much traveling before you actually lose contact with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a real good one. The cat is there again.
Yeah. I think I'm disturbing her with all my talking, so she.
Come here, meow. I'm hungry. There is a point that while you spoke, there came this thought. But when you think about a female sales engineer or woman in sales engineering, and if I imagine a lot of guys, I would say the majority of guys, they come from tech, right? Or they have their domain background, whatever it is. Doesn't need to be tech, of course, but there's somewhat, I think, more on the introverted scale of things, like also personally, right? It's about this being lonely, and that's why I had this idea,
okay.
right? Because you enjoy time for yourself, of course, right? Or with yourself. That's okay for you if you're more introvert. This is how you recharge. Would you say women are more on the extrovert scale, or is there a similar, like, is it dependent on role that you're more into yourself and have a lot of thoughts and think deep? What do you think?
I don't think there's any generalization I can make there. Personally, I'm an introvert, even though you wouldn't think that. So, especially because I'm an introvert, this whole 2 years of pandemic have allowed me to be much more social than I would have been if I had to do stuff face to face. Because I think most people misunderstand what an introvert really is. It's not about not being able to be outgoing or whatever. We just need more time to recharge. And the whole, like talking to you here is easier for me than going to an event and actually interacting with people and a lot of people in strange environments. And then, so I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to be an extrovert to do this job. You don't, and I know that because I'm not. But what you will have is protective of yourself. Because, and that's also something that came with the traveling. I learned that, there are colleagues who would, they would travel, then in the evening they would go out and they would have drinks and, socialize with people. And I would need time in my hotel room, for example, after a day of meeting. So that's the difference. And you have to know very well what you need or you will burn out. So that's basically the difference between being an introvert and an extrovert. But the job is great for everyone. It's more about, do you actually like to talk to people? And you can like talking to people even if you're an introvert,
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree that the technology we have, like may it be LinkedIn or Medium or like StreamYard now, it helps me as an introvert to cross this gap. Right?
I feel that so deeply because over the last 2 years, I have met so many amazing people over the internet. I have never met them in person, but I had the best conversations just over this medium, and I would never have had the energy to do that in person. So
and I think it also benefits your job. So that if you're a sales engineer and you meet domain experts that way, people are very open just to jump with you on a Zoom call. It's amazing if you just ask. That's also my since 2 years, since everybody needs to be online, right? They're willing to do that. Yeah, no problem. Zoom, whatever, Teams. Let's do it, right? So there's a comment from Alvaro. Hi, Alvaro. Great to have you here again.
Hi.
I have to say that I'm where I am today thanks to my wife. She's the one who leads my family and supports the hardest load. My part is only enjoy my work.
Yeah.
There's more. Could we make an analogy between handling colleagues as female leader and handling old style sales teams as new way pre-sales? Okay, let's start with that. Two different things.
Okay, so the first part, I think that's what a lot of men had, and a lot of especially older men had. They just had to enjoy their work, and that is a double burden that a lot of women carry. And that's why I also feel that having this flexibility on how you structure your day is so helpful. It doesn't mean that your burden is lighter, it just means that you can more easily carry it.
Yeah. Do you need to be raised differently? So what part play your parents in that?
My parents, I come from a very traditional family. My father worked, my mother was a housewife. So it's not necessarily that I had a role model in my mother. I mean, I've talked to a lot of female colleagues, and a lot of them said their mother, was their role model in their workplace. My mother, of course, is a role model in other ways, but she didn't work. So, and it was traditional in the sense also that, for example, my brother got a computer, I didn't. And things like that. It was very traditional. The only difference maybe between our family and others was that my parents had the expectation that all their children would go to university. It didn't matter. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and the expectation was always there that we would have a higher education. So it didn't matter if you were a girl or a boy, and it didn't even. And my father is Nigerian, I have to say that. And with Nigerian, there's not much option. There's doctor, lawyer, engineer, and there's that's a real job. Everything else is not a real job. So me studying chemistry was already a problem, really.
Okay.
Yeah. So even though I come from this very traditional background, it wasn't that I was not encouraged to educate myself. It was just that the expectations of what my interest would be were very traditional. So I don't necessarily think there is an impact of your back. Of course, if you have parents who support you and maybe also give you the idea that you could be something different, like an engineer as a girl or even an astronaut or whatever, that's helpful. It makes the progression easier or the choice easier. But it's not, in my opinion, not completely necessary. I just did what I felt was interesting. I never worried about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not even sure if I answered your question or talked about something completely different.
It's all good. I think what to say is you have to shape your future, right?
Yeah.
So no matter how you maybe have been treated, like maybe your dad said all the time, "Shut up when men speak."
No, he didn't. Luckily,
right? So, but it could happen to somebody, right? So still, I mean, at some point you will be 18, right? And you have to decide.
Yeah. Actually, you brought up an interesting point. So I didn't mention that initially, but I have this series called Women in Technology Spotlight. It's a podcast where I interview women about their journey into tech, what they did. And then at the end, I tend to ask them, what tips they would give young women. And there's some things that come up again and again. And one of them is around, just doing what you want to do and not asking for permission. That's a big thing, for example, because you just mentioned at some point you're 18 and then you have to, go your own journey. And that's a very important thing. And recently I spoke to someone who was based in South Africa, and she said an interesting thing that stayed with me. She said, don't ask for permission. There's nobody there who can give you permission. It's just you. And that's so true. And we always tend to wait around for people to give us the permission to do something, like, for example, as a woman going to tech or whatever. Nobody can give you permission. You're the one who decides where your life goes, even though it might be harder if your environment is not supportive.
So I think let's encourage everybody, every woman to start in pre-sales, right?
Yeah, I would. And I do. Every time I talk to someone, I tell them, this is great. I mean, it's just a great job to do. And it's also this feeling of working on the one hand with people, and the other thing is working with technology. And also, if you work in the vendor space, you always work with cutting edge technology. You always, a little bit ahead of what is currently being done. If you're in one of the innovative companies, and you're always out there talking about what the future would look like, and you're shaping the future. And that's also something that's really interesting about being in pre-sales. You have a chance to go out and shape the future. Yeah. And that's also something that not many people can actually say about their job.
Yeah, that's where the challenge also comes, right? It's a bit entrepreneurial at that sense. Yeah. I sometimes felt that, right? Because you're shaping a market in some way, you're giving a vision forward, and sales is complete chaos, right? So you need to somehow also manage this with yourself, with your values, and so
true. I always said to people, well, working in pre-sales for these companies is very much like being self-employed, but with a regular income, which is, I mean, like the upside of not being self-employed. You don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about your paycheck because that just comes. But your daily life is very much like being self-employed. And of course, this is also something that was more pre-pandemic. I always enjoyed not knowing what the next day would look like exactly. Of course, I would know that there would be a meeting I would have, but it wasn't like you go to the office at 9 and then you stay there until 5 and then you know what it would look like. It wasn't like that. It was always different. And that is also something that makes life more interesting, I think. So it's, there's a lot of self-motivation. There is a lot of, as you said, entrepreneurial aspect in there. And there's all these, there's also an aspect of self-exploration. You learn a lot about yourself doing this job, right? I mean, our topic is actually how to handle like more experienced, more experienced colleagues. And that is something that you actually also learn. You learn a lot about yourself when you're in situations that are difficult. And over the years, you have a lot of opportunity for self-reflection.
Yeah. Let's bridge over to this topic in a second. Let's go and then take Alvaro's comment here too. Could we make an analogy between handling colleagues as female leader and handling old style sales teams as a new way pre-sales? I don't really understand it.
I don't either. Maybe there's it's maybe like just a comma missing or something. But maybe Alvaro meant that there's an analogy between the way a female colleague has to handle their colleagues and the way I'm not sure. I'm not really sure.
I'm not sure either. So Alvaro, maybe you can send this again.
Maybe you can elaborate.
Maybe reframe it a bit. Yeah. It's tough to grasp what you mean, what the conflict is. I have a question for you. So a little mind experiment, and I want to talk about the leadership thing now, right? So you're a young, aspiring female sales engineering leader, and you join a company with other leaders, all are male. You go in this first leadership meeting, right? Maybe there's a VP sales, whoever, you sit down with all your colleagues, all male, right? And then the leader, the VP says, well, okay, Ronke, welcome. You're new in the team. Welcome to the team. Would you take notes today, please?
Yeah, that's actually a big problem that a lot of women face. And it's, and I think...
Can you stay in the role and play it? What would you say?
Well, what would I say? I probably would say, I'm sorry, my handwriting sucks. You have to find one other colleague to do that. Because the thing is, you can't go full confrontation. That's not possible. So you have to kind of make a joke about it, but you also have to say no, I feel, especially if you're new. Because once you are, this new person, you come into the room as a young woman, new to the role. And if you actually take on this job of taking notes, that will stay with you. They will give it to you forever. And it's also... the perception will, remain that you are, this woman who is responsible for menial tasks. But so, yeah, I would probably make some kind of joke and I would just refuse to do it. But that is what you just mentioned is one of the many microaggressions that you will encounter as a woman. And I don't want to pretend that this is easy. So one of the things I think you have to do as a woman in this role, in any very male-dominated role, or as a young woman going to feel this, you have to be prepared. So you have to be aware that there is implicit bias, and you have to be aware that there will be these kinds of microaggression, and you have to be prepared. You have to think about how you will behave. One thing you cannot do is you cannot get emotional. Because unfortunately, if you get emotional or, or aggressive, or even, people see that you're hurt, that has a very bad connotation especially in companies where things like this happens, because there are different companies. There are companies that are aware of these things and they try to counteract them and to try to create spaces where people feel included and feel like they belong. And then there are companies where things like this happen, and those companies are also usually the ones where you have to be prepared. So the only thing I can say is talk to all older women, especially when you're young and you come into the field. Talk about things that might happen, talk about how they handle it with them, how they handle it, and think about what you would do before it happens. Unfortunately, that is the best answer I can give you.
Yeah, maybe someone in the audience just has another situation. Shoot it to us, right? Maybe we can give.
Because I just recalled one situation. I was standing in front of a venue because it was a very sunny day, and I was standing in the sun outside with my laptop preparing for my talk, and then like 3 men came to me and tried to register for the event because for some reason because I was the only woman there. And there was this perception that a woman with a laptop standing in front of a venue even must be the receptionist. And and the thing is, because I have been doing this job for a long time, even when I was still studying chemistry, it was very male heavy, let's put it that way. So I've been working with men for a long time. I mostly just think these things are funny, but I don't think that young women can see the humor in the situation yet. It will take a couple of years before you can actually laugh about stuff like that.
And I think that's great that you say, like, be prepared. It will hit you hard if you observe that while doing, right? If like the world opens up and you think, oh my gosh, this is how it runs, right? So how can you prepare for that? So
well, you can prepare by not being. Let's put it this way. If you have gone through a traditional road, like going to university and studying computer science in Germany, Austria, or in one of the middle European countries, you are already prepared because you have already spent time at university being one of the, the few, or the only, that's actually a quite interesting book I just recently read by a colleague. And you will have already experienced so many microaggressions, so you will already know what to expect. So you can already reflect on that. If you come from another field that's maybe not that male dominated, you might not be prepared. But I think, and then, as I said, it would make sense to network with other women and talk with them about these things. Unfortunately, I think some women, if they don't do that, they might, despair a little in these roles, because there are a lot of little things that happen. And
Let's take this a step further with what Amanda writes. I feel sometimes it's so hard for us as women to say no. And sometimes we only realize the microaggression after it happened.
It's true.
It is hurtful and frustrating not being able to react correctly and on time. That's a good one,
Amanda's right. Women have this thing, and there's even a phrase for it. It's called the disease to please. A lot of women have that. So we have a hard time saying no anyway. And then there's the situation, and you're in the situation, and you're maybe not even thinking about something negative happening, and somebody asks you to do, and you just want to be helpful, and you do it. And then later you realize, but why did I, as the only woman in the room, get asked to take notes? So the first time you might not even be aware of it. The second or third time you probably are. And it is hurtful and it's frustrating. And there is not much good to say about it, except that there is a lot of work around diversity and inclusion, especially in the bigger companies. There are a lot of programs, and there's a lot of training around awareness. And part of it is, it's also upon us as women in the field to actually speak up. There is no one else to speak up. Men will not speak up because they are not impacted. And that is why I spend a lot of my time on this topic. And try to work on promoting diversity and inclusion and talking about these things, because I know that even if we don't want to expend this additional energy and we don't actually want to be doing these things because we would have better things to do with our time, it is upon us to, this generation, to push to make it better for the next one. And I'm very, very optimistic that it will be better. It's already better. And that's something I see is how many young women have actually joined the field. As I said, at this other company, I was the only female sales engineer, which is a weird situation. On the one hand, you're proud because you're the first and the only, and on the other hand, you're the only, and everyone else is different. And now when I look at VMware, for example, there's so many amazing young women who are working in these roles. And I feel it will get better, but it is still upon them as well to speak up, when things like this happen, and they don't necessarily have to confront the VP. That's hard, but they can go, and we are trying to build networks. We have things like the WISE network, and we have women at VMware pods and things and find older female colleagues or women colleagues to discuss these topics and help you. So yeah.
There's a book I read. It's a German book, and it's the first woman in the board, or a youngest woman in the board, and she got asked weird questions, right? And she wrote this book about she doing interviews with male leaders from Germany, and it's really interesting. It's a light read, and it's fun, but it's revealing. There was this notion about role model, and I'm touching upon this now because you said women need to take the responsibility, and you as a woman, if you're a leader, you're automatically a role model. Yeah. And then there was this question in the book, like, do you see yourself as a role model, right? That's what she asked the guys. And they said, well, better not, right? I'm just trying things out, right? I'm just going my way, making things up. I make mistakes all the time. Better don't use me as a role model, right? And I think that speaks a lot, like how men and women see their role, right? Women are essentially forced to be the role model. So they need to act and be prepared in the right way, right? Whereas guys just mean it, right? And say, don't take me as a role model, please. It's weird. What do you think?
Yeah, there's actually research on that, and especially there's this Lean In initiative, and there's the McKinsey report on women in tech, for example. And there's this whole problem that women, and also, for example, women of color like myself, we have the issue that when we go into a room, we carry the burden of being a representative because there's so few of us, So when we go into a room, we try to do everything perfectly because we know that whatever we will do will reflect back on our gender or on our race, which means that we carry this additional burden of trying to be perfect. And men don't have that. There's so many of you, and nobody's looking at you, So I'm not saying that men don't have to perform, but they have more freedom to try things out without people. When a woman comes into a company, gets a job, and then, for example, she fails at doing something, there will be men immediately who say, oh, it's typical women and technology. Actually, that's one of the jokes I always make when something goes wrong. So, women and technology. That's
it had to go wrong.
Yeah, it had to go wrong. So, yeah, but it is that problem is there. The role model problem is there, and that's why I think it's so important to for every one of us women to act as a role model and make ourselves a little more visible that we might want to, because I feel that other women have to see that there is more of us and that they're not alone and they don't have to carry the burden alone of being that woman in the room. And it's getting better. Recently, when there was a chance to have face-to-face meetings, we had a customer meeting, and I was with two saleswomen, one specialist and the account executive. And we were in this room, and there was a meeting, and it was from the vendor side was only women. And it was actually fun because, there was one guy who opened the door to the meeting, looked in, and then he wanted to leave because he thought it was in the wrong meeting. So that was fun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But what I'm trying to say is it is getting better. There's so much more women in the field, and that makes it easier.
Yeah. But also, guys, please stand up, right? So be a role model. Like, do that. Take responsibility. Don't hide in the crowd, right?
And maybe be more vocal about the fact that you're just trying stuff out and that you don't actually know everything, because that's, especially if you're a young woman coming into field, that's intimidating. You come into a room and there's all these men who have maybe, started playing with computers when they were 5, while you just realized, when you were 19 that you were interested, and they have this head start. And, just being more vocal about the fact that you can try things out and that it's okay to not know an answer is super helpful when you are starting out in the field. And I think we all should talk about that more. I try to talk more about, failing at things. I try to talk more about the fact that I don't have the answer to many questions, that I just try things out. And that's how you learn, because most of us, learn by trying.
And what do I do now? Now I'm new in the company. I get the leadership role as a woman, and I now have a team of 5 guys, right? Every one of them is an experienced sales engineer. And even if I'm not a woman, so even I would feel like, oh gosh, that's a tough one, right? How do I gain respect? Why should they accept me, right? All those kind of questions. That's about your ego, your self-confidence. What do you do as a woman? How do you handle such a situation? What would you suggest to do?
I understand that you asked the question, what would I do as a woman? But as you said, the answer is the same for you. I mean, in the end, what you should not try and do, especially if you are not as experienced, and even if you are experienced, you shouldn't do that. You should not try to how to say this, to out-tech them. Don't try to prove to them that you are just as good at the technology as they are. What's the point? I mean, this is not your role. You're a manager, maybe, or a leader. You're not supposed to, know all the little details of the technology. So what I would do is I would set up one-on-one meetings with every team member and try to get to know them and try to understand what they are looking for, what their problems are, what their pain points are. The same thing I would do when I talk to a customer. And I would not focus, because usually, when you try to manage a team of sales engineers, there's all this stuff that they have on their plate. They might need help building connections internally. They might be interested in, climbing up the career ladder, and just make sure that you help them with the stuff that's important for them. You can't help them with the technology. There's no chance in hell that you will be good enough, maybe if you're lucky and it's a special problem that you were super interested in, and you might have an answer, but in the end, this is not your job. Realize what your job is, and your job is to create a space for your people to grow and evolve, and that's what you can do. And don't try, the same as I would say with a customer, don't try to show that you're more intelligent or you have more skills or you know more about tech. That's doomed to fail.
Okay. 2 questions.
Yes.
What should I show specifically? So what would be actions I should perform? Maybe kind of meeting or whatever. And the second is, what do I do with the person who tells me I don't listen to girls? I'm really provocative, but I don't listen to girls' advice or coaching or whatever.
Yeah. Well, the first thing, as I said, what you should do is, set up a meeting with every one of them to get to know them and to understand them. Because I think the only way to answer how you can manage someone is when you actually know what they need. And you have to talk to them. And again, here we are with empathy and listening. So that's something. And also, again, I think that women are really good at this, trying to find out what men or their team actually needs. Mm-hmm. And about the second question, I mean, I have never met a man like that. I don't really have an answer to that. I think that's an extreme point where we would actually have to consider setting up a meeting with HR. If someone tells their manager they're not willing to listen to them, don't even try to. I mean, what can you do there on your own? Nothing. Because in my opinion, that is a situation where someone is willfully being misogynist, and that is a HR topic. Sorry. I mean, usually it's the first and most. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm reading the post by Amanda. Yeah. Because
okay, go to HR. Yes.
yeah, with that, I mean, if someone tells you to your face, I'm not going to listen to you because you're a girl, that is obviously misogynist, and I mean that's usually against company policy, and I'm not willing to have a discussion on that. I'm just not. If you think that you are not capable of working with women, then you don't have in my opinion, you don't have a place in the workplace at all. And yeah. But I must say,
I absolutely agree. But sometimes you need to repeat, right, what to do exactly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you feel, is it enough already that I should like go to HR with this? Or
yes, it is. It definitely is. I mean, if you are working in a company like VMware, this is definitely against company policy and guidelines. And if you behave like this, no, sorry. And but I must say, this is an extreme situation. And,
of course.
I don't think you have to be able to solve extreme situations. The same thing if someone starts screaming at you and berating you, you don't have to interact with that kind of thing. I mean, there are certain rules in the workplace and certain expectations. And one of the expectations is that people treat each other respectfully. And if someone in your team is behaving totally out of the respectful norm, you don't have to try to fix this. And I mean, I think it's a good point that you actually asked this question, because if you're young and you're starting out, you might feel that you have to fix this because you are now the manager, and people might expect you to be able to fix this, but you can't, because in this case, someone has told you, I am not willing to work with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing for you to fix here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing, as Amanda also said, yeah, I think leadership, especially in times like this, is very much about relationship and understanding what people need and trying to help them grow. And that's, yeah, I think servant leadership is the way to go nowadays anyway. Try to be the person who uplifts your team. And if you follow that, and if you try to build good relationships with people and relationships around who they are, not what you want them to be, and give them also a space to talk about things that are really important to them, I think you are golden. As I said, there's no way, especially if you're younger, to out-tech someone who has been in the field like 20 years and try to impress them with your knowledge. There's no point in doing that. And it's also, I think, just it puts additional stress on you, trying to prove that you're just as good in the technology as like your colleagues. That is something you should never do, actually. Just saying.
Yeah. Give me a practical tip. So let's say there are now these experienced people, right? And you say we should serve them, we should uplift them. What is it I can do to a person or for a person that thinks they reached the top, right? So
Sorry?
how do I serve? So if there are sales engineers in a team that think they reached the top, right? They're highly successful.
Yeah.
They rock every client meeting. How do I serve them? What is something practical I can still do to serve them so that I can build the trust and the relationship?
Yeah. Well, even if someone is like on the top of their game, there's probably something that he wants to achieve in his life. I mean, maybe he wants to go into product management. Maybe he wants to become an evangelist. Maybe he wants to become a manager themselves. So I think it's the thing is to find out what is it you want? What is your why, and what is it you want to achieve? And then just try to make it possible for them. Everyone has something they aspire to. And even if and especially if you're really good at sales engineering, if you rock every meeting and I mean, then there's the point where you think, what is the next step? So try to find out what the next step is and make that possible for that person.
No, that's great. And so you're a medium writer. You write a lot. I think nearly at least every week, I think. Maybe
Oh,
more,
no.
right?
Sometimes at the moment I'm a bit not as frequent as I'd like to be, but yeah, I write a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Same with me, but you got a lot of followers already, right?
Mhm.
On Medium. And the question I have to that is, do you see like a benefit for your leadership by putting out your thoughts? Do you see a benefit for prospects or customers you work with by being that visible on LinkedIn, on Medium? And you have your own podcast, right?
Yeah.
You're founder also of I have the name here,
The Queen Beehive. Yeah.
the Queen Beehive, exactly.
So I'm a person who likes to try out things. So
Mhm.
that's what drives me. I like to see what it's like to do things. I've always liked to read, and I always thought at one point in my life I would write. And the pandemic has given me a lot of time because a lot of the stuff that I was doing outside I couldn't do. So I started writing on Medium, and that was just an interesting experience for me because I could write about things that are in my head and put them out there.
Mhm.
Topics I'm interested in, and part of them are workplace, new work, and all these things, and the other stuff is around cybersecurity and these and technology, and how I think that the workplace should look in the future, and all these thoughts in my head I can just put them to paper, and or not paper because we don't have paper anymore, but you know what I mean. I can just put them into words and post them, and that is just for me a way to structure my thoughts maybe around certain topics.
Yeah.
And
And do
then
you see an impact? Do you see an impact on your team? So maybe does your team read this, or do prospects tell you,
let's put it
"Oh,
this
I've
way.
read your final."
The thing is, I never started doing these things actually to have a reach. That happened somehow.
Yeah.
And with the reach came discussions with all kinds of people and new thoughts. So it has evolved into a lot of visibility that I now have on LinkedIn, as you mentioned. And it also evolved into the whole idea of the Queen Beehive, because that was also something that just evolved out of conversations I had with women and all around the topics of work and being self-employed and doing things and visibility for women, and also earning money and all the whole situation of women as a whole. And it has writing and putting myself out there, putting my thoughts out there, has given me a lot of visibility. That is true. But I didn't start with it to get visibility, let's put it that way. It has now become a tool to talk about certain topics and also come into contact with certain people around certain topics. And it has also been the reason why I started this platform, where I'm now trying to build this community or database of women experts and speakers and business owners, just to have this place where you can actually find them and be more visible. So it's nearly done, and platform is just finished programming. I'm just starting with the launch. I was supposed to do it last month, but you know how it is in IT, everything takes longer than expected.
Yeah.
So
That's the Queen Beehive, right?
the Queen Beehive, exactly. So the webpage is live, and I'm going to start with the marketing now. But as coming back to your question, it was never around, I want to be visible. It was, I have all these ideas and I don't necessarily have people to talk to about them. And then I started writing about it, and then I started talking to women. Then I had this whole idea with the podcast, creating visibility and role models for women who want to go into tech, because there's always this, we need more women in tech, we need more women in tech. And I thought, okay, but we have to tell them what we do. Because when you tell someone I'm in tech, they think you're sitting in front of your computer in a hoodie and programming, and that's it. But there's so many roles out there, and I thought, okay, let's just talk about that. And then and with that came other topics that built upon that, and discussions with other women, and it just grew and grew and grew. And that's how I also came in contact with you, because I think Tina recommended I talk to you, for example. So I don't think that, so okay, let me put it this way. I think doing things for visibility's sake does not make a lot of sense. I think it's more about talking about things that interest you, and then people who are also interested in these topics will find you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
No,
my.
it makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Sadly, I can't see who this is, but the LinkedIn user is actually
Oh,
looking forward, I think, to
thank you.
your Queen Beehive.
Okay. Thank you, whoever that was.
The work that you're doing is to provide a platform for women in tech to share and gain visibility is so important.
No,
I
thank you.
can only underline that.
And I want to be clear. I mean, it's not just for women in tech, because I think generally that women, that we always have this topic, and it always happens. You have like a project, or you have like a talk or an event, and they're looking for a women expert, and then somebody says, "Oh, but we can't find any." And it's I was thinking, the whole thought around that was, okay, we have to make it easier. There are enough women experts out there. There are enough women speakers out there. And hi,
Hi,
Dola.
Dola.
And then there's also enough women who own businesses, and it's just a matter of having a place where you find them. So it's not just for women in tech, of course. It's always the women who are in tech who will adapt initially, because they are already on the internet and they're already working with tech. But I'm hoping that other women in other fields will also use this, and we will can create this this mass of women who support each other and build a network. So that's my plan here.
That's amazing. There's one hypothesis I have about when you write, like you do now, and maybe that's interesting for other leaders too. I think you crystallize so much of your thoughts that you actually become better in expressing them, and therefore you become a better leader because you're more concise. You
Yeah.
build up your values, right? You know exactly what you talk about. You have talk tracks in your mind because you crystallize them in posts, right? Would you agree or disagree, or how do you
Yeah,
think?
that's actually a really good point, because one thing you do when you write things, and I think I mentioned that, is you structure your thoughts. So I have all these thoughts around new work, for example. I have thoughts about leadership, and how I feel you should treat people. And when you start writing them down, you have to be more concise, you have to structure it. And then also what I do, you don't necessarily have to, but what I do is I read on the topic, and I take some courses and stuff, and yes, you do get better, because you have thought about it more often than other people, and then your thoughts sound more structured.
Yeah,
So yes, yeah.
exactly. That's yeah. There's another thing. I mean, we have 3 more minutes.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
if you have two more. But there, there was one point I wanted to talk with you about, and this is the psychological safety, right?
Yeah,
So to give people space and the freedom, and actually the trust that everything is okay to speak up.
yeah.
What should I do as a leader, or what should I shouldn't do as a leader to actually keep this psychologically safe environment in my team?
Yeah. So that's such a big topic,
Yeah.
psychological safety. But I think there's a couple of very easy things that you can do and I mean, we have all been there. You're in a room and somebody asks questions and three people roll their eyes. That person is never going to ask a question. So one of the things you can do is make sure that there is respect in the way people treat each other in meetings, that you, for example, put up rules on how to behave, when somebody asks a question, and make sure that if somebody does not behave accordingly, that you talk to them, not in that meeting, but you talk to them privately and may explain why you don't want that. And what you can also do is you can model asking stupid questions, for example, because nobody will roll their eyes at you. So, model, for example, asking questions when there are topics that not everyone is understanding, and nobody's, nobody feels free to ask questions, for example. Model failure. And that's also a big topic, for example, showing that failure is something that is part of growth and part of every project. Someone will make a mistake, something will go wrong, and just how you behave in a situation like that. If you talk, how you talk about failure and mistakes, will give people the freedom to fail. For example, if they see that if a mistake happens, for example, and then there's a lot of repercussions, for example, they will try to start hiding mistakes and failures, and then all of a sudden there is no safety.
And what are signs of no safety? So what would be signs that there isn't safety?
Well, signs that there isn't safety is nobody's asking question. For example, there's a meeting, someone presents new technology, there's a new, I don't know, new features, new release, whatever. People are presenting that. There's not a single question. That is a sign that people don't feel safe to talk about what's in their head. There's a project and the deadline is coming closer, and you have this feeling that it's not going to happen. But every time you ask someone how we're doing, say, yeah, everything's good. That is a sign that there's no safety, because all these things. If you're in an environment where people don't speak up, you can assume that there's no safety. And the other things is, for example, if you watch how people interact with each other, do they have coffee breaks together? Do they go for lunch? Who talks to whom? How do they treat each other? Do they talk behind each other's backs? All these little signs, that there is now, that there's something toxic going on.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
but I always feel that, to create a safe environment, it is a lot about how you yourself behave in difficult situations.
So me, the leader?
Yes, you, the leader. Because people will take your behavior as a model about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and they will run with that. And if you are very clear on, what kind of communication rules are allowed, true dollar, whether it's allowed to fail, whether it's allowed to make mistakes, and how we deal with mistakes, all these things are the things that create safety. And also, then especially if you're a woman or if you're a woman of color, how you are treated at work, how much of yourself you can show. If there are comments about your hairstyle, or if there are comments about your clothes and all these things, just a general understanding of what is okay, to what is accepted, what is it's such a broad topic. I don't even know where to start, really. But I can't hear you. No sound. Still no sound. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
This thing just died. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Last thing from Dola. She or he who has never failed has never tried anything new.
Yes, and and I think this is one of the most important things, because especially here in Austria, I don't know how it is in Germany, example, but in Austria has no failure culture. So if you fail, there will be immediately someone who will tell, "Oh, I told you so. This couldn't work." I mean, and that's why nobody tries.
They have to start a company, right?
Yeah. So that's why nobody wants to try anything, because they're afraid that the minute something goes wrong, or when it gets tough, some fool will come around and tell them that they always knew you would fail. So I think failure culture is a very, very important thing, especially if you want to try something new. You have to be ready to not succeed.
Absolutely, it's part of the game, right?
Yeah.
So I have to say, you made this very you gave me freedom to speak, and I felt I could make mistakes. So thanks a lot for that. So I think you're a great role model and a great leader.
Thank you.
Your experience really shines through, in everything you say. And I'm very thankful that you took the time to be here. We are over the hour. It went faster than you think, maybe, right? So
thank you, Patrick. Thank you for inviting me. I can't believe that the hour is already over. It was really nice talking to you. And there's so many topics we could have probably talked about longer, but there we are. So. was a great experience.
There are more episodes to come, so let's see. Maybe there's another chance. Would be my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, then yeah, we are done actually. So thanks a lot for everybody on the stream. Write us comments even afterwards. We can see them on LinkedIn or YouTube. They are visible. And with that, I wish you a great last week ahead, the rest of the week. And Ronke, thank you very much that you have been here. We are over and out. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Patrick. It was great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.